China and Russia are forging much closer economic ties through Russia. China is buying oil and coal from Russia to help combat an energy crisis, while Russia has become a top market for the Chinese currency. Enterprises are trying to fill the void left by Western brands in China. This week, Chinese President Xi Jinping and Russian President Vladimir Putin will meet for the first time since Moscow sent troops into Ukraine earlier this year, according to media reports. In February in Beijing during the Winter Olympics, Russia and China declared their friendship had no limits. Since then, Russia has sought ever closer ties with China as Europe and the United States reacted to the invasion with wave after wave of sanctions. Experts say that Beijing has carefully avoided violating Western sanctions or providing direct military support to Moscow. This balancing act, they say, is a sign that Xi won't sacrifice China's economic interests to rescue Putin, who arrived at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit in Uzbekistan this week with his army retreating from large swaths of Ukrainian territory. The trade relationship is booming in a lopsided way as Russia desperately seeks new markets and China, a country that is 10 times the size of Russia, scrambles for cheap goods. Bilateral trade in oil and coal has reached all-time highs as China purchases oil and coal to combat an energy crisis. Russia, meanwhile, has become a top market for China's currency as Western brands are leaving. Chinese firms are rushing to fill the hole left by departing Western brands. Bankruptcy is the act of declaring ownership of assets recording a debt. It is also known as the insolvency of a company or an individual. China's spending on Russian goods soared 60% in August from a year ago, reaching $11.2 billion, surpassing $49 million in July, according to Chinese customs statistics. Shipments to Russia increased by 26% to $8 billion in August, also accelerating from the previous month. In the first 8 months of 2015, Chinese goods trade with Russia increased by 31% to $117.2 billion, rising a record $147 billion last year. According to former U.S. Undersecretary of State for Economy, Energy and the Environment Keith Krach, Russia needs China more than China needs Russia. As the war in Ukraine drags on, Putin's losing friends fast and increasingly becoming more and more dependent on China, he concluded. The 2.8% share of China's trade with Russia compared with the 2.5% share at the end of last year is up from the 1.7% share in 2011. The European Union and United States have much bigger shares. In pre-war times, China was already Russia's largest trading partner and accounted for 16% of its total foreign trade. The Russian economy has been affected by Western sanctions, which have increased in importance since the second biggest economy in the world has assumed greater significance for Russia. Russia's central bank has not published detailed trade data since the Ukraine conflict began in June, according to Bruegel, a Brussels-based economic think tank. However, a recent study by Bruegel estimated that China accounted for roughly 24% of Russia's exports in June. As a result of the Ukraine crisis, China is buying Russian energy at a discount and replacing Western companies that have left the market, according to Neil Thomas, a senior associate at Eurasia Group. In May, Russia was no. one supplier of oil to China, but that position has been in the hands of China for 3 straight months, according to latest Chinese customs data. China's coal imports from Russia reached a 5-year high of 7.42 million metric tons in July, according to data from China's National Administration for Information Technology. How does yuan, the new dollar, in Russia look? Western sanctions have also hit Russia hard, cutting it off from the world financial system and limiting its access to the dollar and euro. The Ukraine war has also resulted in a surge in the demand for the Chinese yuan in Russia, as Western sanctions largely shut off Moscow from the global financial system and limited its access to the dollar and euro. According to Russian news outlet Kommersant, up to 20% of the total Moscow Stock Exchange trading volume in July was accounted for by yuan, up from less than 0.5% in January, according to Russian news media. According to Russian state-controlled media RT, daily yuan-ruble trading volumes hit a new record last month, surpassing ruble-dollar trade for the first time in history, reported Bloomberg. In July, according to data published by SWIFT, global financial institutions processed payments in yuan from around the globe into Russia, which was third in the world for payments made in yuan outside mainland China in July. Even in February, Russia didn't appear on SWIFT's top 15 yuan markets list. Russian businesses and banks are also turning to the yuan for international payments. In addition to billing China in yuan and ruble for natural gas supplies, Russia's Gazprom said last week that it would start charging China in yuan and ruble for gas supplies, and Russia's VTB Bank said it was introducing electronic money transfers to China in yuan. Beijing is happy that the yuan will be used worldwide because it considers the currency a world currency. China's extension of its redback currency vision to include Russian use is an important part of that endeavor, as well as increasing China's institutional power in international finance, Thomas from Eurasia Group concluded. China has desperation for Russia, according to Kratch. A deal between Russia and a predatory power would be possible if the deal gives access to capital, because Russia has been severely weakened, in part by sanctions, Putin is willing to do a deal with a predatory power. Chinese companies are also using the exodus of Western brands from Russia to their advantage. In Russia, Chinese smartphones accounted for 2/3 of all new sales between April and June, according to Reuters. Video, Russia's top electronics retailer, said that, despite increased sales in April and June, Chinese smartphones accounted for 70% of all new sales in June. Xiaomi held 42% of the smartphone market in Russia in July, according to Russian media Kommersant. In July, Samsung had 8.5% of the market, compared with Apple at 7%. The market was split nearly evenly between Samsung and Apple before the Ukraine invasion. After the war began, new products were discontinued in the country. Chinese vehicles have also arrived in Russia, according to latest data. In August, the market for Russian passenger cars was dominated by Chinese manufacturers, according to Russian analytical agency Autostat. Almost 26% of Russia's market was accounted for by Chinese manufacturers, the highest on record, the agency said. Major global auto players, including Ford and Toyota, have reduced their spending in Russia this year. According to Thomas at Eurasia Group, China is not providing military, commercial, or technological support that would risk significant U.S. sanctions on China. Beijing will not sacrifice its own economic interests to support Moscow, he said. China has so far steadfastly refused to violate international sanctions against Russia, forcing Moscow to ask for military support from North Korea, Singleton said. Xi is personally disposed to assist Putin's war effort, but Beijing's refusal to violate U.S. and international sanctions reflects its begrudging acceptance that China remains reliant on Western capital and technology to sustain its ongoing development, even though Xi is personally disposed to assist Putin's war effort. President Xi Jinping won't want to assist Vladimir Putin if the Chinese economy's continuous decline this year further restricts his willingness to do so. The Chinese leader will want to avoid destabilizing the economy mere weeks before he is poised to secure an historic third term at the Communist Party's Congress in November. What the future holds. It's likely that relations between China and the future will remain strained, and the country will want to keep its options open, analysts said. A historical mistrust between the two regimes has always existed, says Kratch. Sino-Russia cooperation is mainly designed to ward off a defensive nature enhanced by Beijing and Moscow's stance that NATO and the United States are a palpable national security threat, said Susan Thornton, senior fellow and visiting lecturer at Yale Law School. As Western hostility towards Russia increases, China will not oppose Russia's war in Ukraine, according to Zhang. Follow World News Channel for more live updates.